And I was like, I don't want to go work for a competitor. I already work for the best company there is. So
Mhm.
what am I going to do? And there was a bunch of us who were always saying, well, if I had my store, I'd do it like this. I'd do it like this. And I was like, maybe I should just open up my own store.
That was Cheese Plus owner Ray Bair. I'm Jeff. Welcome to Storied San Francisco, a weekly podcast where San Franciscans from all walks of life share their stories, and you get to know your neighbors. In this podcast, Ray picks up where he left off in part 1, with his arrival in San Francisco. He charts different roles he had at Whole Foods stores and a regional office, before he left and soon thereafter bought the store known for the last 15 years as Cheese Plus. Later in the podcast, he shares the story of how he, his wife, and some friends started the 6 Foot Social Club. Having now owned Cheese Plus a while, Ray ends the episode talking about how the coronavirus lockdown will affect small businesses once it's over. Here's Ray.
I had an apartment on 17th and Belvedere.
Belvedere. Where is that?
Up from Cole Valley. Ashbury High,
right.
top of Cole Valley.
That's the top of 17th goes all the way up that hill.
And that street, Belvedere, is, I don't know if you know this, is quite a famous street in the city at Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
It's considered one of the safe streets where they close it off. And,
yes.
And I lived in the one apartment building on that entire street. Everything else are all single family homes and quite nice ones, by the way. And it was, so that was my first foray. I had a little love shack, I would call it, in a converted garage in the back of an apartment building.
Yes. So this would have been like the early.com.
It was early.com. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep. That was all starting to kind of take place.
And were you tempted
to shake a little bit?
Were you tempted to buy any of that? Or were you like, I'm going to stick with what I know?
A little bit. My career was really starting to solidify.
Mm-hmm.
And my goal at that time was to become the regional director of so I was in cheese at that point, and
Mm-hmm.
I was managing the cheese in the wine department. I had done that in Berkeley, and I had done it in Palo Alto,
mm-hmm.
and then in Mill Valley, and then it became apparent that there were 3 stores, and there was the acquisition of more stores happening around the Bay Area into the company, that there's going to need to be a regional office, right?
Okay.
This isn't just a single store doing these things.
Right.
So I kind of had my mindset that that's where I wanted to go. And they had created it for a couple of, the produce, of course, because it's such a huge part of it.
Mm-hmm.
They created a distribution center and purchasing, and it was all centralized and, or greatly centralized, I should say. And I was like, we got to do that for cheese and wine. And so that was really my goal. So I wasn't really tempted to get out just yet. So, I've always been kind of bullheaded and kind of independent. And I wasn't alone at that time, but we were all like, how's this going to work? You got to squeeze the melon. You got to smell the fish. You got to do all these things. You're not going to let somebody else do that for you. How are they going to do that?
So did you go to the regional office, or did you actually work in any San Francisco Whole Foods stores?
So I opened the store on California and Franklin in 1996.
Wow.
And that was the last store that I was based out of. And then I was promoted to the regional director. We did some really, really cool stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
My old boss, Walter, he's no longer with the organization. You guys can look, Walter Robb. He was just an incredible guy in that he would just push the limits on everything.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes he didn't like that because
right.
Personally he would do it too. But I had so much respect for him for that because, he sent, he like go to the fancy food show in New York and say, stick around and go see all these stores and bring back the best of what you're seeing. And then he would say, I was in Germany and I went to this store and I saw this. What do you think about this concept? And we would, we'd brainstorm it. And we were just doing cool stuff. I mean, I was I was definitely pushing the limits, for sure. I got my hand slapped a number of times. You
Mhm.
know, I was the last person that I know of who sold foie gras in the company.
Oh, wow.
And they basically just every time they would tell me that I was going to get fired for doing it, I was like, well, fire me, So
Yeah.
I always had the sort of a specialty slant to my natural food style. We used to have bowls of caviar. We'd scoop it out, and we had that olive bar where we did everything the wrong way, but it was the best way. It was
Well,
wicked expensive to do it operationally, and inventory was out of control, and but it was sexy and it was fun.
it was a big part of my moving here.
That was the first.com, and that was the first wave of like everyone's a millionaire.
Mhm.
It was also very, for me as a food guy, network TV, Food Network, right?
Mhm.
Emerald and all of that kind of stuff was happening. And so suddenly 24/7 food, people were traveling. They were coming back from Europe saying, can you get me this? Can you get me that? And we could get anything,
Right.
legal or not. It didn't matter. Nobody cared. Before 9/11, nobody checked anything.
Right.
After 9/11, everything changed.
Right. So how do we get from, you said you went to the regional store. How do we get from there to
The
Cheese
Cheese Plus?
Plus?
So after a number of years of working at the regional level, I kind of achieved my goal and my dream. And truthfully, I'm the company got bigger
Mhm.
and things were different.
Mhm.
And there was a good year or so that I was very angry at the company,
Mhm.
and I was very dissatisfied with my job, and I really felt that it was their fault.
Mm.
Um, and so I just gotten married. I'm a late bloomer,
Mhm.
and so here I am. I don't know, 38 years old. Just got married, and my wife says to me every night when I come home, "Why don't you just quit?
Mhm.
Can you just set the date? Just set the date. Just
Right.
just decide when you're going to quit. Just set the date." And so in this process, I started to realize that they weren't the ones that were broken. Um, it was really me. I didn't fit in anymore.
Yeah.
And
That's a very adult realization.
it was a very adult realization, and I came to it kicking and screaming because I
Oh, yeah.
still wanted to not be an adult, right?
Yeah.
And it was a big decision because I mean I worked, I worked a lot of different jobs before them, but I was a kid when I started working for them. I
Yeah.
flipped burgers, I worked at Colonel Sanders. The most famous place that I ever worked before was I worked at Stubbs Barbecue when
Oh,
when
yeah.
when Stubbs was still alive, and
Right.
it was a hole in the wall,
Mhm.
and that was just a part-time, little gig because I lived a block away.
Right.
But so it was like, oh my God, you know, at this point now it's like you got stock options, you're making money, you're well respected, you have a lot of goodwill that you've built up.
And you're not even in the store
And you're not even in the store, right?
at the
Well, you're in an
regional.
airplane seat or you're in the seat at the office all the time. And
Yeah.
for me, that was part of the problem. I love the travel part. I love visiting the stores, but I really had a hard time with the quota system. I came to the realization that I no longer fit into the organization
Mhm.
anymore.
Okay.
My favorite, best experiences were when this company was smaller.
Mhm.
And my favorite, best experiences were when I was in the store.
Yeah.
So I I couldn't go back and be a floor manager. That would be a step backwards,
Mhm.
right? It's how I felt about it. And I didn't want to go work for, at that time, I thought the best competitor we had was Andronico's, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Now sold to
Safeway.
Safeway.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to go work for a competitor. I already work for the best company there is. So
Mhm.
what am I going to do? And there was a bunch of us who were always saying, well, if I had my store, I'd do it like this. I'd do it like this. And I was like, maybe I should just open up my own store. and just go for it.
Hmm.
And
You mean
so
thinking like opening from the ground up
from the ground
type
up,
of thing? Okay.
yeah, from the ground up, like
Okay.
I'll just start my own business. I've got a
That's
little bit of money.
ambitious.
Yeah, I'm ambitious. I've got money, I've got skills, I've got connections. I felt really, I was like, I know all of the players in the marketplace, right?
Right.
So I know where to procure the materials, the products, the whole thing. And, I had been working for this company for a long time, and certainly that was going to mean a lot to a lot of people. Um, so, so I quit, and they were extremely gracious and provided me with a long exit window. I felt
Okay.
uniquely, right? And so we ended on very, very amicably, on very, very good terms. And
Cool.
actually, a number of the people in the organization really helped me in the early days.
Hmm.
There is equipment in Cheese Plus now that was once at the Petaluma Whole Foods and at the Berkeley Whole Foods store, that when they did a remodel, they called me and said, "We're throwing this in the trash. If you want it, be here by 6 p.m. and pick it up."
So
And I'm like,
awesome.
"Okay, I'll be there." And,
That's so awesome.
and showed up and did that. So I had a lot of friends that kind of helped me out in the early days. And that's what you have to do. That's what bootstrapping is all about.
And so, as we mentioned, you went out thinking you were going to open a place brand new. You're going to start with. How did it come to be that you found this? I'll let you tell us what it was, but yeah, how did that happen? Was it just kind of pure circumstance, like just pure coincidence, I should say?
It was, I want to think it was divine intervention.
Serendipity, yeah.
I'll tell you the story truthfully. So the interesting thing was that, as I said, I was getting stock options. So the stock options were going to vest on a certain day, I think like the last day of March or April or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So when that happened, I went, so they would vest at like 12:01 a.m. And at 8 a.m. I was at, I had my resignation papers for my boss.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make sure I got that year's worth of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
that was money that I needed. And I knew what I was doing. I knew the intention was for me to leave to do that. So I go into the boss's office, shaking, voice cracking,
Oh yeah.
sweating profusely. Like, I think I was living in San Francisco. I drove across, the offices were in Emeryville. I think I drove across the Bay Bridge in like 90 seconds.
Oh my God.
It was like pedal to the metal. I was so nervous.
Yeah.
So basically went in, gave my notice, walked out, started crying and just went home and went to sleep,
Mm-hmm.
Had a meeting the next morning with a broker, a sales broker. So brokers are in betweens between the manufacturers and the retailers, and so
Okay.
they help to handle things like promotions and marketing dollars and demos and all kinds of things like that. So you go to the broker and you're like, "Hey, I know you'd like for me to carry your product, whatever it is, but I need you to, agree to give me, so much off 4 times a year, this and that."
Mm-hmm.
So it's a negotiation. So anyway, this guy Bill, who's a great friend of mine, and we're still stay in touch, and he's still in the industry and a giant in the industry. I had a meeting with him, and I said, "Okay, Bill, I have to tell you something. I can't negotiate any long-term deals with you today." And he's like, "Why is that?" I said, "Because I quit, and I'm going to be leaving here soon, and I'm not going to set up some sort of promotion and then have somebody else come in and be sort of forced to do what I thought they should do, right?" Because
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of the reason why I was leaving. I was like making these promotions for the stores, and they would be like, "Oh man, don't send me 15 cases of that. I still have 10 from the last time that happened,
Mm-hmm.
And so there was that tension was there. So Bill says to me, "Well, what are you going to do?" "Well, I'm going to start my own business." "Oh yeah, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking a little cheese shop. I'm thinking, I really like that store, Say Cheese, over there on Cole and Carl. That's cool.
Yeah.
It's a cool store. I think something like that. Super romantic.
Oh yeah.
Kind of extremely naive. And he says, "Well, Leonard's Leonard wants to sell his place. Leonard's looking to retire. And I was like, Leonard's? I was like, oh yeah, Leonard's. So Leonard's 2001 is what Cheese Plus is now. 2001 Polk Street, and Leonard was the owner there. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I was equally as nervous then as I was the day before, because I'm like, oh shit, I have to actually make this happen now.
Right.
I've quit my job. I've got X number of weeks that I'm going to stay here, and then I got to figure this out. So that's the short version of what happened. Leonard had been there for 13 years before I took over the store. And it took about a year before I took over the store. Yeah.
Was it closed in that interim?
No, it was open. It was open.
Okay.
And
okay.
We never we closed the store one day to paint it. But otherwise, we stayed open, and we made all the changes that we did to the store. Right there, we just put plastic, hung it from the ceiling, and dug up the floors, and we put in a bunch of new electrical and plumbing, because there was no food service there. So the cafe that we do, the sandwiches, the charcuterie, the cheese, none of that really existed previous. So we had to create a whole new production line, and that was the biggest part of the remodel. One of the things that was, most difficult for me in starting Cheese Plus, there were so many things that were super easy, right? So it took a long time to make the decision, but it was a slam dunk decision, because we knew that on the very first day, by taking over Leonard's and turning it into Cheese Plus, that we were going to have sales the first day.
Right.
I didn't have to go out and I didn't have to build my consumer base. They were already there. So
some of the fears were reduced.
Some of the fears were reduced, right? So we went through we went through the process of negotiations. First day we're open, we're busy, we've got sales. I've got a lot of energy and a lot of desire to make things happen. And I knew I had a vision of what Cheese Plus is now. So much of that was the original vision. It was written into the business plan. Okay. And it just took us a while to roll it out.
Right.
I wasn't nervous about getting product. I knew my products well. I'm a smart food guy. That was my job, was to purchase food for this big company, and to do all those types of things. But what I was really naive about and unprepared for was the culture shift of where I was coming from, that I had to be the standard bearer of the culture for my company. Mm-hmm. And it took me a long time to really figure that out. Suddenly, I've got to be HR and marketing and IT and the buyer and the manager and all of those things. And so it took a long time for me, mentally, emotionally, as an entrepreneur, or at least for me as a business owner, there was this fight to get the business off the ground, right? That's the initial part. Let's get it off the ground, and let's make sure we've got some sales and we can pay our bills. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, let's get to the 5-year mark, right? That's the first sort of major milestone for a small business. Mm-hmm. If you make it to 5 years, the chances you're going to make it to 10 are much greater, because so many businesses fail in the early stage. So we finally get to the 5th year. We're finally starting to make a profit. All those things are happening. Then you start to feel trapped. I can't leave. I can't do anything. I am completely consumed by my decision to own this business. Why can't I take a vacation? Why can't I turn off the lights and walk away?
Right.
And and then there'll be factors within the organization, things that'll happen, blow-ups with team members and with vendors and customers and things that will sort of like nick at you and some nick a little bit deeper than others, and really start to feel it. And then you kind of, for me, then I emerged from that feeling of being trapped. My brother was great. And he basically told me one time, you chose this life, so why do you keep bitching about it? Kind of thing, why do you keep complaining? You chose this direction, And I was like, you're right. I'm not busier than you. My life is not more important than yours. So you have that initial challenge. keep the door open, but then you're like, oh crap, this is what my life's going to be like forever. And then I get to the place of a new sense of vulnerability. We're now 26, 27 team members that work in the organization. And when we started, there was like 4 or 5 of us. And you start to feel responsible for their families and things. And you worry about, is an earthquake going to come and knock out this? So this is my life's work, and this is my money and my prosperity. The same thing for all the people that work for me. Or is a competitor going to come in and wipe us up? Or is there going to be some sort of a disaster, or or something that would happen? Like, first it was like some sort of like foodborne illness type of thing that would happen. You couldn't really think about like COVID, but there was always this boogeyman in the corner, right? And so the boogeyman now is COVID.
Can you tell us about 6 Foot Social Club?
6 Foot Social Club, yeah.
Where did that come from?
Well, 6 Foot Social Club was a concept that was developed by some friends of my wife and I. My wife is in the creative visual arts industry. She does marketing and represents commercial photographers and digital artists and people like that.
Okay.
She has a great roster of creative people that she's worked with over the years. And there's a gentleman named Matt and his wife KK who live around the corner from Cheese Plus, and we're friends with them. And he does design and creative work, and she is a copywriter. And so the idea to make t-shirts to do fundraising was something that popped into my head at the very beginning of the shelter-in-place period. There was an email that went out amongst the businesses in the local community saying, hey, make sure you sign up for your PPP loan, all of these small business things, and here's some legal resources and different. So we were starting to email each other with different things, like, and always with the beginning, good luck, we're all in this together, I hope that we all survive, and do these things. And
sharing resources, essentially.
Sharing resources.
Yeah.
So I'm reading this email, and then I get this text from Mike over at Babylon Burning, right? Mike, t-shirt guy. He makes t-shirts for us and for everybody else because he's the coolest guy ever. And he's like, hey, I hope you're doing all right. Good luck in this, right? So we're all like basically sending each other messages in the community going, good luck, good luck, good luck. I hope this thing's over soon, and so I'm like, oh my God, there's Mike. Oh my God, there's this email I have. We need to make some t-shirts. So I respond to my business community, my local email chain, and I'm like, hey guys, everybody, look out for each other. I have this great idea. I want to make t-shirts and to raise funds for the businesses that are closed and for the workers who can't work in our neighborhood. And but I'm really busy. Can somebody take the lead on this? Literally, I wrote that. I'm like, I'm swamped. Can somebody take the lead?
Yep.
So like 3 days go by, 4 days go by, nothing. There's nothing happening.
No bites.
And no bites at all. And it's just on my mind, and I keep thinking about it. And so I have this idea, but I don't know really how to execute it. So I asked my wife, I said, we know all these really creative people. Like, do you think you could ask somebody to help me with this? Like, just help me to come up with a phrase.
Okay.
First, the idea was just going to be some sort of phrase, and then we could just put it on a t-shirt and do this. So she's like, well, what about Matt? And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, of course. Why wasn't I thinking about that the first time, And this was the first time that I'd had a day off. A couple weeks into it, and I took a walk with my wife. We live over in Glen Park. So we went over into the canyon, we take a walk, and she's like, well, what about Matt? And I'm like, oh my God, that's a great idea, right? So he immediately said, oh my God, I'll do this. And I've got some people that want to work on this with me.
Nice.
So they conceptualized the idea and came back with 6 Foot Social Club. And I think it was Matt and his wife. I think his wife came up with the term 6 Foot Social Club when they were on a walk together. But as you know, the two things that happen when you're on a walk or in the shower, you get all the best ideas, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so they hooked up with a friend of theirs who is a designer named Marta Harding. So they created a few unique Instagram handles, a website, I think maybe Facebook, I'm not sure what else, maybe Twitter, I'm not sure, and came up with this great design. And so I was like, wow, this is really cool. So we ordered a bunch of shirts. So we put them on sale, and sales started to just it was like an avalanche. So now we're getting it out to the bigger community. We've got 2 restaurants in the neighborhood currently. Lord Stanley, which is on the corner at Broadway and Polk. They're my neighbors closest to me. And then the guys over at McCondry, which is a new restaurant that is up on Polk, closer to Greenwich, just a couple blocks up. They are friends with Matt because Matt dines there or was dining there previous to this. And so they're doing takeout. So Matt's like, hey, these guys want some shirts too. So we've taken shirts to those guys for them to sell for their own fundraising. And my initial idea was that, if we could literally get the whole of Polk Street or the city at large to have these T-shirts in every business that can have them as a fundraiser for themselves. So what we've done that's unique to Cheese Plus, so we have a website. And so we sell merchandise on our website, like our Cheese of the Month Club, gift baskets, and a lot of swag like Cheese Plus aprons and hats and T-shirts and things like that. So we had a mechanism. So we just put these 6 Foot Social Club shirts on our website. Okay. So anybody around the country can order them, and you can have them shipped.
Nice.
And you can do it at 2 or 3 in the morning. While we've been talking, the phone I get automatic notifications that it's coming, and it's a cash register, cha-ching.
Nice.
And so the phone keeps cha-chinging while we're talking because these orders keep trickling in. And my goal, my real wish is that this stays small business, and that it's that old school San Francisco style of supporting the small independent people, because I'm really fearful that in the aftermath of what's happening with the COVID, so the big fear is that not about dying, it's about losing all the cool stuff. It's about the corporate guys filling in the holes that were left behind.
Yeah.
I started off as a in my career, just kind of working, and I didn't have any political agenda really. I actually got my job because there was a help wanted sign in the window. And I worked across the street at a deli making sandwiches, but I would go into Whole Foods to buy beer, and there were cute girls there, and I liked shopping there, and so I didn't have any agenda to change the world. And 15 years of small business, and I'm a fierce advocate for small business, and I'm just so fearful that that's going to go away, that it's going to be tarnished for a long time. I'm pragmatic to know that enough to know that places are going to fail, and places are going to fill the void. But I just hope that there's enough room for small businesses to stay and be successful.
That was Ray Bair. Join us next week when we'll get to know Pinhole Coffee owner Joellen DiPacakivo. Music for Storied San Francisco is by Otis McDonald. Photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. The show is hosted and produced by me, Jeff Hunt. Our website is storiedsf.com, where you can browse more than 100 episodes and help support us by buying merch from our store. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. If that's Apple Podcasts or iTunes, please do us a quick favor and rate and review the show. And if you have any feedback or people you think should be on the podcast, our email is storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Stay healthy and stay safe.